Russia's military has also released these pictures. It might no longer be concentrating on taking full control of Ukraine, and instead...
On the night of April 6th, Ukraine launched a strike against a target in the Black Sea that Russia believed was untouchable, the Syvash offshore oil drilling platform, 60 to 80 kilometers northwest of the Crimean coast. Loaded with Russian radar systems, electronic warfare equipment, and short-range air defense technology that had been quietly transforming a commercial oil rig into one of the most important military surveillance outposts Russia operated in the entire Black Sea theater. Ukraine took it down. What the world saw in the aftermath looked like another successful Ukrainian drone strike. Robert Brovdy, commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, announced the operation on Telegram. Drone footage surfaced. The narrative seemed complete. It was not complete. Buried inside that operation was a weapon that nobody knew Ukraine had. A weapon so capable, so precisely suited to defeating exactly what Russia had built on that platform, that its use changed everything about what is now possible for Ukraine in the Black Sea. Sweden had quietly handed Ukraine the Gungnir, the magical spear of Odin. And Putin just learned what that means for every Russian asset between Ukraine and Crimea. To understand why this matters so profoundly, you need to understand what Russia actually built on the Syvash platform, and why destroying it was so much more strategically important than simply hitting an oil rig in the Black Sea. Russia did not occupy the Syvash platform because it needed the oil. Russia occupied it because of where it sits, 60 to 80 kilometers northwest of Crimea, positioned perfectly to act as an early warning system for the occupied peninsula that Putin considers the crown jewel of his territorial gains since 2014. Russian engineers loaded the platform with radar systems, capable of detecting incoming Ukrainian drones and missiles at significant range. Electronic warfare equipment designed to jam GPS signals, spoof navigation systems, and send incoming strikes off course before they could reach their targets. Short-range air defense systems to intercept anything that managed to get through the jamming corridor. The Syvash platform was not an oil rig wearing a military uniform. It was a fully operational military outpost that happened to be sitting on top of an oil drilling structure. And for as long as it remained operational, it created a protective bubble around the western approaches to Crimea that made precision strikes against the peninsula dramatically more difficult and less reliable. Ukraine understood exactly what it was looking at. And here is the part no one expected. Ukraine had the perfect weapon to defeat it, and had possibly been holding that weapon in reserve for exactly this kind of moment. And this is where everything changes. America backed Ukraine. Sweden armed them, fully. The RBS-15 missile, known by its Norse mythological name Gungnir, the magical spear of Odin, is not a weapon that arrives with fanfare. It arrives with results. Made by Saab Bofors Dynamics, the Gungnir is a full family of anti-ship missiles built from the ground up to combine devastating ship-shattering capability with a land attack versatility that makes it effective against an extraordinarily wide range of target types. Its range extends beyond 3 to 100 kilometers, depending on the specific variant deployed. The warhead weighs 2 to 100 kilograms, nearly 440 pounds of explosive force. It travels at Mach 0.9, approximately 690 miles per hour, fast enough to give most air defense systems minimal reaction time. But raw specifications do not tell you why this missile was the perfect choice for the Syvash strike. The Gungnir uses a combination of GPS guidance and inertial navigation to stay on course throughout its flight. In the terminal phase, an active radar seeker takes over, giving the missile autonomous homing capability that feeds into a fire-and-forget functionality. Ukraine programs the target, fires the missile. The Gungnir handles everything else from that point forward without requiring any additional input from the operator. That matters enormously in a combat environment where Russia is actively jamming communications and GPS frequencies across the entire operational area. Consider what that fire-and-forget capability means for a Ukrainian operator launching this missile under combat conditions. Previous missile systems required the operator to maintain guidance contact throughout the flight, keeping the launch position exposed and vulnerable to Russian counter-battery fire. With the Gungnir, the moment the missile leaves the rail, the operator can relocate immediately. The launcher moves, the crew disperses, and the missile continues its flight completely independently. navigating to the target without any further human input required. Russia cannot triangulate the launch position and strike back before the crew has already disappeared. Ukraine fires and vanishes. The missile arrives regardless. That operational advantage alone makes the Gungnir fundamentally different from every short-range system Ukraine has previously deployed in the Black Sea theater. But here is the part that makes the Gungnir not just capable, but uniquely suited to destroying exactly what Russia had built on the Syvash platform. The RBS-15 has been equipped with electronic counter-countermeasures, its own electronic warfare suite designed specifically to counteract the GPS jamming and spoofing systems that Russia has deployed throughout the Black Sea theater. In other words, the magical Spear of Odin carries a shield against the exact defensive weapon that the Syvash platform was using to protect itself and the approaches to Crimea. Russia built an electronic warfare fortress on an oil rig in the Black Sea. Sweden built a missile specifically designed to fly through that kind of fortress and hit what is on the other side. And here is the part that no one is talking about. Ukraine may have had this weapon for far longer than anyone realized. The deal between Sweden and Ukraine for RBS-15 transfer was reportedly signed at some point in 2024. That means Ukraine potentially held this capability in reserve for months, waiting for the precise target and the precise moment where its unique characteristics would deliver maximum strategic impact. The Syvash platform was that target. April 6th was that moment. What actually happened on the night of April 6th was far more sophisticated than a simple strike against a Black Sea installation. Video released by Ukraine's Navy confirmed the use of Gungnir missiles, showing a characteristic double exhaust plume during the launch phase that is unique to the RBS-15 family and absent from every other missile in Ukraine's known arsenal. The footage showed two launches from what appeared to be a ground-based platform, followed by direct hits against the Syvash structure. But the strike was not simply Gungnir missiles hitting the platform directly. It was a layered operation designed to exploit the precise capabilities of each weapon involved. Ukraine used its Swedish missiles in the first wave specifically to destroy the electronic warfare systems on the Syvash platform. The Gungnir's own electronic counter-countermeasures allowed it to navigate through the jamming corridor that those systems were projecting, reach the platform, and eliminate the EW equipment that had been protecting Russian assets in the western approaches to Crimea. With the electronic warfare systems destroyed, the jamming corridor collapsed. The GPS environment in that area of the Black Sea cleared, and Ukraine's drone forces, following behind the Gungnir strike, could now operate with the kind of navigation precision that Russia's electronic warfare had been specifically designed to deny them. The drones that Brovdi announced in his Telegram post were not the weapon that made the Syvash strike possible. They were the follow-on force that the Gungnir enabled. Sweden's missiles set the table. Ukraine's drones finished the meal. This is what makes the operation genuinely remarkable from a military planning perspective. Ukraine did not just destroy a target. Ukraine demonstrated a layered strike doctrine that uses each weapon system in a precise sequential role, exploiting the specific capabilities of each asset to create conditions that the next asset in the sequence requires to operate effectively. Putin is not dealing with an opponent that points weapons at targets and hopes for the death state. Best. He is dealing with an opponent that plans operations with the kind of precision that only comes from years of combat learning and access to sophisticated Western weapon systems. Now consider what the destruction of the Syvash platform actually means for what comes next. And this is where the strategic implications extend far beyond a single operation in the Black Sea. The Syvash platform was the western anchor of Russia's surveillance and early warning network protecting the approaches to Crimea. Its radars detected incoming threats. Its electronic warfare systems degraded them. Its air defense provided a last layer of protection. All three of those capabilities are now gone. Ukraine has just opened an aerial corridor in the western Black Sea that did not exist before April 6th. Drones and missiles using that corridor can now approach Crimea from directions and at ranges that Russia's remaining defenses were not designed to cover effectively. Every Russian military asset along the western Crimean coastline now sits inside a threat envelope that has measurably expanded, and Russia cannot quickly replace what it lost on the Syvash platform. Electronic warfare systems of that sophistication take time to source, transport, and install. Air defense equipment is in critically short supply across the entire Russian military. The surveillance radar network that covered the western Black Sea approaches now has a gap that will not be filled easily or quickly. Ukraine created that gap deliberately, with a weapon that Sweden handed them specifically because Sweden understands what Russia represents as a long-term threat to every nation on Russia's western border. Here is what this moment means for America, and it reveals something critical about how the alliance against Russian aggression actually functions. Sweden did not hand Ukraine the Gungnir out of charity. Sweden handed Ukraine the Gungnir because Sweden looked at what Putin's invasion of Ukraine represented and made a strategic decision that 2 centuries of military neutrality could not survive contact with Russian territorial ambition. For 200 years, Sweden stayed out of other nations' wars. Then Putin invaded Ukraine, and Sweden watched a neighboring democracy get attacked by a nation that had already demonstrated it would not stop at one border if that border proved negotiable. Sweden joined NATO in March 2024, the first new NATO member in decades, driven directly by the calculation that Russian aggression, left unchecked, would eventually arrive at Sweden's own doorstep. Since February 2022, Sweden has contributed over $13.7 billion to Ukraine's defense, weapons transfers, financial support, intelligence sharing, and now the Gungnir, a missile that Sweden developed for its own national defense, transferred to Ukraine because Sweden understands that Ukraine's defense and Sweden's defense are the same defense. What often gets overlooked in American coverage of this conflict is what that Swedish commitment represents. From an alliance perspective, America is not carrying this fight alone. America built the framework. America provided the foundational support that kept Ukraine in the field during the most critical periods of the conflict. But Sweden, a nation that was neutral for 2 centuries, is now writing billion-dollar checks and sending its most capable missiles because Putin's aggression convinced Stockholm that the cost of staying neutral was higher than the cost of fighting back. Every American taxpayer should understand what that alliance investment looks like in practice. A Swedish missile, developed with Swedish defense spending, guided by GPS technology built on American investment in satellite infrastructure, striking a Russian military installation that threatened the approaches to occupied Ukrainian territory. Multiple nations, multiple decades of defense investment. One coordinated result. This is what American alliance leadership actually produces, not just American weapons in Ukrainian hands. An entire coalition of nations making sovereign decisions to oppose Russian aggression with their own resources because they trust the framework that America built and maintains. Putin wanted NATO to get smaller. He got Sweden instead. The magical spear of Odin has announced itself in the Ukraine war. The Syvash platform is gone. The electronic warfare corridor protecting western Crimea has collapsed. And the aerial approaches that were previously protected by Russian surveillance equipment are now open. But the larger question is what comes next. Sweden is not the only nation operating RBS-15 missiles. Germany operates the Gungnir. Finland operates it, Poland, Croatia, Bulgaria. Every one of those nations is a NATO member that has transferred weapons to Ukraine throughout this conflict. If Sweden has signed a transfer deal, the conversations in Berlin, Helsinki, and Warsaw are already happening. More Gungnir missiles reaching Ukraine means more strike operations like the one that destroyed Syvash. More aerial corridors opened along Crimea's coastline. More Russian early warning infrastructure eliminated. More precision strike options for Ukraine in the Black Sea theater. Putin created this problem himself. He invaded a nation that had no reason to threaten him. He turned neutral Sweden into a NATO member and an active supplier of advanced weapons to his enemy. He demonstrated to every nation on Russia's western border that neutrality is not a protection against Russian ambition. For 200 years, Sweden stayed out of wars that were not its own. For the first time, Sweden decided that this war was its own. And Putin now has to live with the consequences of being the reason that decision was made. Did Putin just hand Ukraine the key to Crimea by creating the very alliance that is now arming Ukraine with the weapons to take it back? Drop your answer below. I read every single comment. If you want daily coverage that does not sugarcoat what is actually happening, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I post every single day, and I am not stopping.